In a quiet village nestled between rolling hills, there was a large ancient tree that had stood for generations. It was known as the wise old tree, because people believed that if you sat under its branches and listened closely, it would offer advice. The villagers often sought its shade for comfort, but few ever understood its silent wisdom. In this village lived two brothers, Ravi and Vikram, who were as different as night and day. Ravi was kind-hearted, generous, and always helped others, while Vikram was selfish, greedy, and always thought about himself. One day, the village faced a severe drought. The rivers dried up, the fields turned to dust, and the trees started to wither. People were desperate for water, and soon the only source left was a small, hidden spring in the forest. Whoever found it could claim it, and the villagers knew that the discovery of the spring would mean the difference between life and death. Ravi, as always, thought about the village, and he said to his brother,
Vikram, we must work together to find this spring and share the water with the entire village. Ravi shook his head. What good is wealth or power if the people around us suffer? We must think of everyone.
But Vikram, with greed gleaming in his eyes, responded,
Why should we share it with the others? If we find the spring, we should keep it for ourselves. Let them fend for themselves.
Vikram scoffed and set off into the forest alone, determined to find the spring first and claim it for himself. Ravi, on the other hand, gathered the villagers and said,
Let us all search together. If we unite, we'll find the spring quicker and everyone will benefit.
As Vikram wandered deeper into the forest, he found himself lost. Hours passed and his frustration grew. His mind was clouded with thoughts of keeping the spring for himself, but the forest was vast and the heat was unbearable. Exhausted, he collapsed under the shade of the wise old tree. Suddenly, he heard a soft voice.
Why do you seek water only for yourself?
Vikram opened his eyes in surprise. He was alone, but the voice seemed to come from the tree itself. Hesitant, he asked,
Who's there?
It is I, the wise old tree, the voice answered. I have watched over this village for many years. I see your heart is clouded by selfishness, and that is why you wander lost.
Vikram, though startled, defended himself.
I'm just looking out for myself. If I don't, no one else will. Why should I share when I worked so hard to find the spring? That's easy for you to say. You're a tree. You don't need food or water. You don't know what it's like to need something so desperately.
I may not need water as you do, the tree replied, but I give shade to the tired traveler, shelter to the birds, and a place of rest for those in need. In return, the earth provides for me. It is a cycle of giving and receiving. If you hoard what you find, you break that cycle.
Vikram sat in silence, unsure of how to respond. His mind was filled with the tree's words, but his heart still clung to greed. Meanwhile, Ravi and the villagers had been searching tirelessly. After hours of working together, they finally discovered the hidden spring. Rejoicing, Ravi led the villagers back to the village with enough water for everyone. As the sun began to set, Vikram, still lost and thirsty, heard the distant sound of laughter and celebration. He realized that the village must have found the spring. Defeated, he began the long walk back. When he reached the village, he saw everyone gathered around Ravi, praising him for his leadership. Vikram, ashamed of his earlier selfishness, approached Ravi. Brother, Vikram said softly,
I was wrong. I should have listened to you. Instead of working with you, I let my greed blind me.
Ravi smiled kindly and placed a hand on Vikram's shoulder and said,
It's never too late to change, Vikram. What matters is that you've realized your mistake. Let's move forward together for the good of everyone.
The villagers welcomed Vikram back, and he learned an important lesson that day. Greed may give temporary satisfaction, but true happiness comes from sharing and caring for others. From then on, Vikram became a changed man, always thinking of the needs of the village before his own. And the wise old tree, standing tall and proud, watched over the village with silent approval, knowing that its wisdom had taken root in yet another heart. Moral of the story is selfishness leads to isolation, while generosity and cooperation bring true happiness and success. The more we give to others, the richer we become in spirit.